Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. Great. Final round. Fight. KO.
Speed and weight!
Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. You win. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. You win. Round one. Fight. Round 2. Fight. You win. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Final round. Fight.